All right, so next up, we're going to be doing episode 4 for the React 2021 series. The starter code, you can take the episode 3 branch and use that as the starter code if you just want to follow along. Or if you want to watch, if you want to get the finished code, then episode 4 is the finished branch for this video. All right, the link for that is down in the description. So what I'm going to do is just a little bit of cleanup here. I'm going to get rid of the title attribute that I had here, the title prop that was being passed into header. So inside of app.js, one of our components, in our components folder, we've got app, we've got header, we've got nav. Those are the 3 components we have so far. We're going to be adding a new one today. So I'm going to create a new folder here called link, and we're going to be putting files inside of that one as well. But inside of app.js, we're getting rid of that title prop. I'll save that change. We'll go into header. I'm going to strip out the reference to title here, and I'm going to remove it from the nav element here. Save that. Down inside of nav, we're no longer using props.ttl. I'll just change this for the moment to say links go here. Okay, now I will start up my server, my dev server, so yarn start, just so we have this running as I make all the changes as we go along, so we can take a look and see how things get rendered. Okay, so links go here. This is where we're going to place our links, and here is the header element. So this is the header element, this is the H1, this is the nav element right here, and we're going to be building links inside of this. So this episode, we're going to be focused on how we can take arrays of data and turn that into arrays of components. So I've got an array of objects, and I want to turn that into a whole bunch of things on the page. You can think of an unordered list with list items, or an ordered list with list items, a nav element with a bunch of links inside of it. Anytime that you've got a series of things that are coming from data, maybe you've done a fetch call, maybe you've got a hard-coded array of data, maybe you've got a JSON file that you're importing. Whatever the source, very common to have an array of things that you want to turn into components on your page. All right, so let's jump back into here. Inside the header, our nav element no longer has anything being passed to it. In the nav, this is where I'm going to bring in those link components. So let's say we import link from, and we haven't built the file yet, but we need to go up one level out of the nav folder into link, and then link.js will be the file that we import. So we can go and create at least the shell for that file. Inside of our link folder, we're going to create a new file called link with a capital L JS, and this one will import some CSS. So we'll import link.css, that file we need to create, and our export default function is going to be called link. It can be passed props. It will return, and let's just put an empty paragraph in there just to have something. Okay, we're not doing anything with it, it's just to have something that can render. Link.css, we'll make that file. Not that there's anything in it yet, but we have it. Okay, back to nav.js. We're importing this link, and this is the thing that we want to build a bunch of. So I'm going to put my data here. The nav is the parent of the links. So this is where I'm going to put my data. I'm going to create a variable here. We'll say const links equals, and I'm going to build an array. Now I have actually an array that I already built, so I'm just going to copy and paste that instead of making you watch me type it all out. There we are. So I've got 3 objects in my array. Each one has a title and a URL. Now, the URL currently is pointing to another website, but that's okay. It's going to serve our purposes here. I want to build 3 links based on the content of this array. So down here, where I had the text previously. I'm going to wrap this in parentheses because it's going to become an expression spread over multiple lines. There we go. Inside of here, this is where I want to put links. Now, it is a link element that I'm creating. And notice I've got this closing slash here. I don't think I've mentioned that in the previous videos, but in JSX, when you're writing your elements, you have to absolutely adhere to the proper opening and closing tag syntax for what will be HTML. In the browser, it handles, okay, I've got a BR tag or an image tag or a link tag, and I don't put the closing slash on it. Well, that's not going to work here. If I left off the closing, you can see I get the red squiggle here at the end. It's missing the closing link tag, and JSX absolutely needs to have that. Now, right now, what I'm doing is I'm writing one nav element with one link element inside of it. The link element is just going to be one single paragraph. Now, if I go to my browser, there it is. There's the one link, and if we go into our DevTools here, and our React DevTools, we can see there's one link inside of one nav, which is inside of the one header, which is inside of the one app. I want to have a whole bunch of these links. I want to turn this array into a series of these components. Well, in JavaScript, when you want to take an array of one thing and turn it into an array of something else that has the same number of elements, it's the map method that we want to use. So, inside of our nav, we're going to create some JavaScript expression. So in JSX, you have to wrap that inside the curly braces. Inside of here, we're going to say links.map. This is the method that we call. Inside the map, what do I want to do? I want to take each one of these links. I'll just say LNK. That's my variable that represents each one of those objects as it loops through. So we're taking link, and we're going to do an arrow function. Now, remember with arrow functions that if you have it all on one line, you don't need the return keyword and you don't need the curly braces. These parentheses do the same thing. I can now spread this across multiple lines, but it's still treated like a single line. So I don't need the return keyword. And what is it that I'm going to return? Well, it's whatever is in this expression. I'm just automatically returning a link. So if I save that now, what I've done is I'm returning 3 of these because there's 3 elements inside of this array. Jump to the browser. Sure enough, there's 3. So we have 3 things being made. And now what I want to do is I want to take these objects and actually pass them through. So let's come in here and say LNK, just like that. And something else. When you use the map method, when you're generating a whole bunch of elements that are of the same type, React needs to know some way to tell each of them apart. And the way it does that is by you providing a key property. The key can be anything you want. It can be a string, it can be a number, but it has to be unique. So I'm going to use the title. I could come in here and we could say, you know what, I'm going to use index. My index number from the map method, that's going to be my key. But why create that when I already have this value called title, which is going to be unique? So we're going to say key equals lnk.title. And now we have the key attribute for each one of these. We come up. Yeah, there's the earning. Each child in a list should have a unique value. That's the key. There we go. So I refreshed it. The error's gone now. 3 link elements inside the one nav element. Each of them has a key property which uniquely identifies each one of them. All right, so we're passing through. Let's call this actually LNK, just just so I can be consistent in my naming. So they're each going to have an LNK property, and that's inside the link. So if I click on link, there we go, props, LNK. It has a title and a URL. So in our link, we can access props.title, props.url. These two properties exist for us. So let's come back into here, and instead of building paragraphs, let's turn this into anchor tags. Instead of just the letter P inside of here, we're going to say props.title, and I'm going to say class name equals, let's call it navlink. And the href is going to be props.url. So in our props, we're getting those two things. Now, this is going to work. I'll save it. We'll come back in here. Okay, I did something stupid here. What we've been doing with props so far is we've been passing down single individual props. Every prop was a single value, something primitive. Here, with link, LNK, we're passing through an object. Each one of these things is an object that is being passed through. So it's not just a primitive value being passed through. We have an object. And that means that inside of props will be something called LNK. And link, LNK, will be an object that contains title and URL. So when we get to this point, what's actually going to be easier for us is we can extract those. I can do it individually. I can say URL is equal to props.lnk.url, or we can use destructuring. And we'll say title is equal to props.lnk.title. There we go. Okay, with those two things defined, we can just use those variables URL and title in here like this. And we may as well put something in with CSS while we're here. So our navlink class that we had on those anchor tags, let's give it a color. Give it a font size, and we'll put some margin to space them out. I'll do padding on either side. Top, bottom, 0, left and right, 1 rem. Okay, there we have it. So now we have LNK, the object being passed in, and we're extracting the title and URL from props.link.title, props.link.url. And that's what's being put inside of here. And if we jump over to the elements section, we can see that inside of nav, we have an anchor, and inside that anchor, there is navlink as the class, there's the href, there's the text, the href. So all of these are here now. And that's how we create components with data. So at the higher level, this is where we define the data, and then we can pass chunks of that data through props to render individual components. And one last note about the naming for this. You may think, well, in HTML there is a link tag. How does it know which is a link tag, like pointing to a CSS file, or which is the link component? And it has to do with the capitalization. That thing that we were doing here as a good practice, actually, this is a signal to JSX that link and this kind of link, this is the one from HTML. This is a component because it has a capital letter at the start, and all of our components should have capital letters. Okay, so that's it. Hope you're getting comfortable with the concept of passing data through props and generating multiple props. In the next video, we're going to be talking about state and starting to talk about hooks and how we can make things re-render and change themselves. All right, so as always, thanks for watching.